we do parallel lines, we have to know what do parallel lines look like. So as you see down here, these are, as you see here, I'm having B, I'm having D, I'm having C, I'm having A. So these two lines, I'm having line A, B, I'm having line C, D. These two lines are called parallel lines. And there is a symbol that indicates parallel lines. So it means I'm going to have those two symbols. So if you see lines without the two symbols, then it's only lines. But for them to be parallel lines, you have to see the two symbols indicating that the two lines are parallel lines. So now I'm having parallel line A, B, and C, D. Okay, so now we have to come to the second question. What is a transversal? Okay, a transversal, I'm going to show you now the transversal. So now I'm having my two parallel lines, as you can see them there. These are two parallel lines. So you can see the transversal. That transversal is that line here. Can you see that straight line there? Passing across the two parallel lines. So that line there we call the transversal. We call that line the transversal, but the two lines here, we call them parallel lines. So you must know a transversal, you must as well know the parallel lines. So let's go to the third question. Okay, today we're not going to talk about parallel line equations, but we are going to talk about what is a parallel line. So a parallel line it can be defined as the line with the same equal distance from each other, and they will never meet. As you can see the two lines here, look at the two lines. These are my two parallel lines. They go parallel. They will never meet. Even if I can lengthen this one, extend it to the right or to the left, it will never meet this other line. So in that way, they must have equal distance. There must be equal distance anywhere. Between the two parallel lines, you must have equal distance. So that's how we define parallel lines, lines which have equal distance. But it does not mean we can only have two parallel lines. We can have as many parallel lines as we can. As you can see here, I'm having many lines, and these lines between them, they are equidistant from each other. So in that way, we can say these lines are parallel lines. Fine, but like I indicated, the parallel lines sometimes could be horizontal, like in this, like I indicated, but sometimes we can have parallel lines as at least a slopy vertical line. I can still have them like this. It does not mean you always see parallel lines being horizontal, but you can as well see them as vertical. But immediately when I draw a line cutting the two parallel lines, that's where now I'm talking of the transversal. Okay, I'm sure we understand each other up to so far. So now we also have to have a clear picture of what parallel lines are. Okay, we are grade 8s. So fortunately, next to our schools, especially next to the gate, you'll see the lines. We call those lines crossing lines. So if you see the crossing lines, the white lines where the learners could pass so that the car could not hit them. So those lines whereby you cross over to the gate of the school, if you can look at them, you'll see that those lines are parallel lines. So now, and maybe tomorrow when you go to school, just check the crossing lines, you'll see that there is equal distance between them. So these, the crossing lines are example of parallel lines. Another example of parallel lines, it could be a book. Okay, look at the book. If I'm having that book there, this part of the book as well as that part of the book, they are parallel. Can you see? This part there and that part there. They have equal distance in between, so they are parallel lines, as well as the edges on the vertical side, on the left-hand side and right-hand side. They represent parallel. We say the edges are parallel. So if I can draw a line along there, you'll see the parallel lines. So those are the parallel lines you can come across. Okay, even a ruler. If you take a ruler, even when I take my cell phone, look at the cell phone, the parts of the cell phone, this edge and that edge, they are parallel to each other. Can you see there is equal distance from this edge to that edge? So the edges, they usually look like parallel lines. Okay, now we are done with parallel lines. So now I want us to sing this song on how to draw parallel lines so that you cannot make a mistake. So let's sing the song. I'm going to sing a song for you. Then from there, you can sing it with me together where you are. So it says, when you draw parallel lines on a sheet, use a ruler to make them meet, meaning that you don't just draw, because if you draw, you can have crooked lines, but you must use a ruler and make sure that the spaces between the two lines are the same. So after using a ruler, then you make sure that the ends never meet. So meaning that if I'm having my ruler, let's say this is my ruler, I'm going to draw there. Using a ruler, I'm going to draw a parallel line. I'm also going to draw a parallel line. So can you see now these are parallel lines, but to show that they are not ordinary lines, I'm going to indicate by that symbol. Okay, then from there I can draw my transversal. I'm sure we are together now. Okay, so you must know this song. When we draw parallel lines, we use a ruler to make them meet, and from there we make sure that the ends never meet. All right, so now what are the properties of parallel lines? The properties of parallel lines are the following. Usually we say they are always straight lines with an equal distance from each other. As you can see here, the distance from that line to that line is the same. From here to there is the same. So if we can draw that line there, it means this line we call the transversal, as I've indicated earlier. Okay, so now, and the parallel lines do not intersect each other no matter how far you try to extend them. I also indicated that. And if there is a transversal, so now let's look if we have a transversal. Let's see what's going to happen. So now we have a transversal. So now if you have a transversal, can you see where the transversal cuts the parallel lines? What do you see? It means it is an angle there. As you know, the definition of an angle is formed by two arms. If I'm having an arm and I'm having an arm with a common vertex, the angle is going to be formed there. So as you know, this is one of the angles that you know because it is less than 90. We call it an acute angle. Good. But now, as you look at this, can you see between where the transversal cuts the parallel lines, angles are going to be formed. We are going to have an angle there. We are going to have an angle here. we're also going to have an angle there, and we're also going to have an angle there. And sometimes we can have an angle here as well as an angle there. Can you see so many angles are formed? Also, we have an angle here and an angle there, an angle there. Can you see that? So there are many angles which are going to be formed. So where the transversal cut one parallel line, you're going to have four angles. It will be the first one, the second one, the third one, and the fourth one. Okay, to the other parallel line and the transversal, you still have 1, 2, 3, 4 angles. So now, this is what you have to know. When a parallel line is cut by the transversal, some angles are going to be formed. So as you can see, we have different parallel lines. But today, because of time, I'm not going to dwell deeper into the names of the angles that will be formed. Or I can just tell you the names of the angles, but I'm not going to tell you how, whether they are equal or not. So now let me make a sketch. All right, if you can see that sketch, if I have an angle there, this is my parallel line. I can also have an angle there. Fine. So these angles, because they are on the same side of the transversal and on the same side of the parallel line, can you see? This is my parallel line, we have an angle. This is my parallel line, we have an angle. And as you see, they are on the same side of the transversal. So they have a special name. And if you can look at them correctly, it's like we have an F. Can you look at that? Look at the F, meaning that we can have an F there, as well as if I'm doing this. As well as if I'm doing this, I join there. Can you see I can still have an F on the other side? So I'll still have an angle there and an angle here. So it means now, if I'm having an F shape, some angles will be formed. Can you see? When you look at the side, you see those angles. So the name of these angles, we call them corresponding angles. Okay, how are you going to identify corresponding angles if you have parallel lines? They have to form an F shape, and they must be on the same side of the transversal. And if they are above the parallel lines, like in this case, they must be above, both angles must be above, or like in this case, both angles can be below. So if they form an F shape, then we call them corresponding angles. Okay, thank you very much, learners. I'm going to stop my presentation now, but I know you're gonna sing the song of parallel lines. Okay, let's repeat the song. The song is saying, when we draw parallel lines on a sheet, we have to use a ruler to make them neat, and we have to make sure that their ends meet, like you have seen. So when you move around town or around the suburbs that you are living in, make sure that you check everywhere, and everywhere there is mathematics, you're going to pass across parallel lines. So thank you very much for this. I'm going to see you again, continuing the parallel lines on the 21st of August, meaning that next week, Monday. Thank you for tuning in. Okay, thanks a lot. So I'm going to stop sharing